We love getting some time with broadcaster, podcaster, professor, former Philly on radio calls, you name it. Doug Glanville, how you doing, sir?
I'm doing great. Enjoying the ride here that the postseason puts us on. So yep, doing well.
Talk a little bit about that for us. You're calling games, you're traveling to be doing studio for the next series. What's this time of year like for you as somebody who used to play that now has to prepare differently but still get up for this?
Well, right now the travel is kind of like playing. I mean, I always tell my wife October 1st. I was like, I'll see you in November. So that's kind of how it rolls. I mean, we're just on the road the whole time, and yeah, I try to get home whenever I can. A couple times, like a series ends up quickly. As a sweep, I just like slide to the house and I'm able to get back. But it's a lot of prep, and I like it. I mean, it's research that I dig deep and try to find out not only the statistical basis for how to describe player and performance in the season, but also the storytelling aspects. Talking to players pre before the game and just getting a sense by just sitting with managers. That part's really fun because most of the time when I go to these games, it's like a family reunion. Really, I'm generations of players, some of which I was a fan of growing up, and we're all kind of in the same place, all trying to celebrate the sport and tell the stories of the game. And so I enjoy that a lot. And but yeah, it's busy, a lot of travel, time zones. Phoenix, Philadelphia. But then all of a sudden, cold turkey. It's like boom, season ends, and then you're in your off season.
You talked about being an alumni. You're an alumni of the Phillies. It seems like this Phillies team is a very cohesive, fun group. How important is it to have that kind of locker room for the success? We all know that talent is supposed to be what wins, but in a team sport, especially like baseball, it seems like the teams that have that cohesive unit
It makes
go
a
for it.
difference, certainly. Yeah, it certainly makes a difference. I mean, we talked to Rob Thompson before a lot of the games of the Phillies, and he said that a lot of times about how fun this group is, how much he enjoys going to the park. I mean, it definitely, is that X factor because you want to enjoy your job, you want to enjoy people that you're around all the time. And I don't think it's a prerequisite to say you have to win. I mean, there's teams that definitely have, guys that didn't necessarily get along, but they respected what each other's role is for the team. They still are able to elevate team above self, even if there's personal one-on-one challenges along the way. But there's no doubt it makes it more enjoyable when you have so many games and you're traveling so much and you're seeing these guys all the time. That it helps that you get along really well, and it's just having fun because it just makes the season not only go by quickly, but go by in a way that it's memorable, it's enjoyable, and you feel like you have the energy right to get through all the grind.
Phillies are still up 2-1 in the series. Obviously, yesterday's game very different than the first two in Philadelphia. Talk about what you've seen both in the atmosphere of the locations, but also the way the players approached those games differently.
Yeah, well, I mean, Philadelphia is just we know the passion of the Philly fans, but this is really like kind of a next level of it because you have the postseason, you have this sense of understanding that they are the 10th man, right? They're embracing this in ways that has shown a lot of sort of diversity of their approaches. Just like with Trey Turner, got off to that slow start, and they gave him a standing ovation in support. It wasn't because he was playing well; they gave him a standing ovation, like, "Hey, turn it around." That's shown another dimension to Philly fans that I think had been there, but just on the public scale, you didn't really see that a lot. And now you're watching the impact of how loud they are. I mean, I was in the first game 1 and 2. It's like you couldn't hear anything. I mean, it was so absolutely deafening in there, and just how well they supported their team and how the players feeded off that. I think a guy like Bryce Harper really feeds off of it, and so they know they're consequential. So I think when you look at changing venues, going to Arizona now, well, of course, you don't have that Philly fan extra. You saw that it was different, and part of it was the Diamondbacks pitchers executed really well. They were home. They didn't exactly light up the scoreboard offensively, but they did just enough to get the win. So it's a little reset for the Phillies to go from like this adulation and this like loud environment supporting them wholeheartedly in stentorian voice to another environment where it's like kind of quiet, and now they're batting first, so to speak. So it's something that players have to adjust to quickly to make sure you kind of maintain your level of play.
You talked about adjustment. This year, more than any other, probably has been a lot of adjustment because of the rule changes. The frustration for Phillies fans right now is the lack of adjustment by Craig Kimbrell. He seems to not have adjusted to the pitch clock, and he has not seemed to have adjusted to runners on base. What have you seen from the way that Craig Kimbrell is approaching this, and how do the players? What's it like to be a player behind a pitcher who's doing some of the things that Craig Kimbrell is doing?
Well, Kimbrell is a player he's had an incredible career, right? And I think he's done it a certain way. He ritualistically, right? He's done it a certain way. He's a 2-pitch pitcher. He attacks. He has this, hang the arm thing. So he has a lot of routines. A lot of players do, like they kind of go about their business. I think he's remained rigid in those routines. It's given him a lot of success. He's probably one of the greatest strikeout pitchers of all time. So it's hard to argue. Plus, he's had a really good year. There's times in the last couple of years like, is he on the kind of downside? But he's got the strikeout numbers right back where it's been, and it saved out some games for the Phillies. But yes, he's still within that sort of style of his preparation, and his routine is like he's sticking to it. And so you see him throw a lot of baseballs out, right? He doesn't like the ball. He's like, he's very particular about a lot of stuff, and the clock's meanwhile ticking. So I think there's some pitchers and hitters that were more able to adjust quickly to the rules changes than others. Some are just more wed. I mean, Aaron Nola had a lot of trouble with the pitch clock. And, one tidbit I thought was fascinating, that he was so worried about the clock, he started turning to look at the clock all the time, and it's because there's 2 of them right behind. And, to the point where he started angling off and closing himself off, physically. So I think he realized that some of that stuff has a physical manifestation, which is why there's pitchers that are concerned about changing too much, right? Because they think it's going to have that impact. But yes, you have to hold runners, especially against the Diamondbacks. But you have to hold runners to a certain degree. In certain situations, you have to at least have that in your repertoire to be able to shut them down with a slide step or something different. But Kimbrell, look, his job is to get outs, and a lot of times they let the runner steal the base and they just get the out, and then that's that. But the more you play in these close games with teams like the Diamondbacks, that stolen base could be the difference between a win and a loss.
Despite the fact they lost yesterday, they still trailed at the end of 3 total innings throughout the playoffs. Their starting pitching has been better than anybody could have hoped for. I mean, you got Ranger Suarez at a .94 over his last 8 postseason starts. You got Wheeler and Nola, who, like you said, Nola figured out. Jeff and I had talked about it a lot on the show. Will Nola figure it out? He seems to have figured it out. Today, we've got Christopher Sanchez going. Talk about what we've gotten out of the pitching staff that's been able to back up what we've got with the hitters that's gotten so much attention.
The Phillies have gotten everything they could possibly even ask for from their pitching. I mean, first of all, Suarez, 2 starts, shutting down the Braves. I mean, just really incredible performance. And you think of him as the guy that they were not even sure they were announcing yet. I mean, they might have known certainly more than before they announced it, but it was like he was that swing guy, right? It wasn't like Nola, Wheeler, Suarez, right? Now you have to say Nola, Wheeler, Nola. So Suarez just rolls off your tongue now. That wasn't necessarily how the playoffs started, but he's just been incredible. So their starters have been incredible, and they've been that way. It's really been their asset all year. I mean, when you trade for Michael Lorenzen, who's an all-star, who throws a no-hitter in his first home start, and he's like a kind of a 6th starter, that just tells you how deep they are in this postseason. So very good pitching. And the starters, what they do is if they go deep enough, they hand the ball off into the bullpen where they're best set up to be successful. That's the key of also having good starters, because they go deep enough and you're like, okay, now I'll take you out strategically for this matchup, not because you're getting knocked around like a pinball machine. I think that's what these starters have given the Phillies as well. It's starting and keeping the team in the game, and then also having the bullpen be at its best. So they've been exceptional. I think they're the sort of all-star MVP slash of the Phillies postseason. Even with Harper's and Castellanos and the big bats, the pitchers have really allowed it to keep where the leads have been able to get stretched because they keep putting up zeros.
We have a guy on this team who played for the Cubs and played for the Phillies, like you. He's batting leadoff, and we shake our heads here and sit there and go, how is a guy that's batting 180 successful in the leadoff slot? What have you seen about Schwarber, and what makes him so different and so special that a guy who's not going to steal a base, who's not going to bat 200, is somehow motivating this team and making it work?
Well, I asked that very question of Rob Thompson, like I think 2 or 3 days ago, because I asked him, I was like, well, what have you learned about what is a prototypical leadoff hitter against sort of what you knew all those years when you were coaching and coming up with the Yankees and all these. And he said, well, it's no longer about speed and stealing bases. And he said, those are nice, but it's really about getting on base and getting in a position to score. And Schwarber does that. Yeah, he might have hit 197 or whatever, but his on base percentage was near 350. He's on base. And by the way, with him on base, that means he's circling the bases. So you're getting a quick strike right out of the gate. First batter, home run, you're up 1-0. I mean, that's just Schwarber. So it comes with strikeouts. It comes with, a lot of other stuff. He's not going to play defense. He's going to be in the DH position. That's the big reason that it was a big deal that Harper was able to take first base, because it gave them more versatility in the outfield. But yeah, so Schwarber in this modern game, so to speak, yeah, you just want guys that are good hitters that get on base now, not so much they necessarily have to steal it. And to our point earlier, you see a lot of pitchers who just ignore the base runners for a while until they absolutely have to pay attention. So they're not even worried about guys taking second base anymore, because they're just trying to get the hitter out, and try to get a Schwarber out is a tall order, because even if he's hitting 197, that hit's going over the wall, and you still have to make your pitches because he's got such good discipline at the plate.
Wouldn't you have loved to play in an era when the pitchers don't care if you're going to try to steal?
Oh yeah, it would have been fun, especially with these guys getting running starts, because they literally know how, based on how the pitcher comes set, that they're going home. I mean, it's remarkable. Anybody can steal. I mean, we talked to Christian Walker of the D-backs, and he's he had like 11 stolen bases. I don't think he got caught. There's something really remarkable. He's like, I'm not even a base stealer, but they give me all this information, and it's so clear he's going home. I'm getting running starts. So, dude, I can steal 30, So he's really an example of the stolen bases for everyone now. It's just situationally when you use it. But I don't think you can stop anyone from stealing. I mean, it's that hard unless the pitcher is 100% committed to doing it, because most of these stolen bases now are off the pitcher.
I want to ask you about lineup construction. Sometimes we've seen Thompson flip Harper, depending on whether it's a lefty or righty from the 3-4 spot. But in the game yesterday, Harper saw 18 pitches, 17 of them were balls. Alec Boehm obviously struggled a little bit behind him in the playoffs. Would you move the lineup around? Would you leave it where it is? You've had Castellanos, who's played well. Turner, are you a creature of comfort guy, leave them where they are, or do you look to make a move?
If it's working, and you certainly have to define working. We asked Rob Thompson this a lot about Castellanos, because a guy hits 4 home runs in 2 days. You're like, why is he hitting 7th, right? That's the natural question. But he's like, but you also have to know the personalities of your players, where if you disrupt them and put them in places that, change too much, that might actually work against you. It's like you said with Kimbrel. Like, okay, yeah, you could make him move faster and pitch and not change all the baseballs. But then who is he? Is he still Craig Kimbrel? I mean, do you want Kimbrel holding runners and then have a 9 ERA? So it's like that's how fickle the players are, and how sort of insecure it is about their role. So I think in the postseason, you see Rob Thompson sticking to Castellanos. They're sticking to the lineup more. If it was a regular season and you're looking for offense, you might have moved them. But right now, he was just like, I don't want to mess with it. But I think if he, has another day, he kind of struck out a few times yesterday, maybe today it doesn't go as well. Maybe he reconsider that. But I think the Diamondbacks are going to have to do more than have one really good pitch, well-pitched start to convince the Phillies to kind of change their whole lineup. They have to shut them down for more than one outing, and then we'll see.
These playoffs and these four teams seem to have four managers that are really chess guys. I mean, that we are lucky enough to now have strategists as the four managers. How enjoyable is it for you to watch these managers work in the way that they are?
Oh, I love it. I mean, I'm having a great time really getting to know these managers in these contexts. I mean, I certainly knew them, but now I really know like how they manage style wise. I see it every day. Did a lot of Astros games, a lot of Rangers games, a lot of Phillies and D-backs. So they're all very familiar, and it's fun. They're tactical. There's a lot of psychology. There's a lot of attention to like the personnel, like who they are as people. Torey Lovullo is one of the best. He models himself after Terry Francona, just a style of like understanding who the players are. He's very sensitive to their, where they are emotionally. He's just in tune. And I think that's true for all these managers. That's what's really cool about it, because there was a period where all these veteran managers were kind of like on the outs. They like, oh, these old heads, they don't know. They're just like, what do they know? We could calculate it, using an algorithm, and that's it. That's how you run a bullpen. But then you find out like, oh, this guy's having a tough time because he's got a family member who's sick, or this person's Then you start to realize like it's managing people that's just as important. I mean, yeah, you have to know your X's and O's, but this wave of managers who are the guys that were on the sidelines for a while are now back in the fray, and their skill sets are very much appreciated now. And it's not only that, they're winning under that format and that approach. So yeah, I've enjoyed it because they're very tactical, and they're thinking about things 10 steps ahead.
You talk about the managers out west. It's tied now in the ALCS. Your thoughts on it basically being a 3-game series now between Houston and Texas? Jeff is very interested from a prior life bet, but your thoughts on how the Houston and Texas is going right now?
I mean, it's sort of fitting the Houston narrative. That's the thing that probably concerning for the Rangers. All right, so Houston at home this year, they were 39-42. Terrible. That's as a home team. But on the road, they were 51-30. So I said right away, I said it doesn't matter. I know they got wiped out at home, but they're just a good road team this year for whatever reason. And Dusty said that a number of times. So I just think it's fun to know that they know their team and they know like how to tap it. So I look at the series as like, I mean, you see 7, but you also see like something really majestic happening. And what that is, I don't know. But both these managers might pull all the stops out. Every trick they have in their book, we're going to see on display. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised seeing Dusty bring cigars out to the mound during a mound visit or something. I mean, so anything is possible. But they've seen it all, and I keep telling Dusty every time I see him, please write a book, because you just have to document everything and all the things you think about, because it's vast.
You've talked about your admiration for Dusty in the past. What is it like for you as a guy who's announcing right now? You're not announcing those games, but to announce somebody that you have such admiration for.
Well, I see it as an honor because I think I try to take the time to tell the stories as much as possible. And look, in radio, you don't really have as much time because you really have to describe the action, and because people can't see it in theory. But I think you still have moments to contextualize things, and that's the fact that I get to sit with them before the game and talk to them. I think that I still learn a lot of new information about all these figures in a way that's relevant to their task at hand, and see them in real time, really making decisions. And all I come away with just being more impressed with how they go about their business. Just the attention to detail about the people that they're in charge of. I mean, that impresses me. Like James Mims, take him. He's a security guard at Dodger Stadium, been there forever. And Dusty always comes up there and talks to him before. And, he's like, the godfather of his son and all, they're just like, you just find out all these things that have maybe sometimes nothing to do with what's happening on the field. Bochy is always a fun one too, because I played for the Rangers, and a lot of the staff, they're still there. And I get to see him in that environment where I'd spoken to him many times over the past few years when he was retired, and you could see it like percolating that he's getting a little bored, or he's starting to. And I love to see these guys with institutional knowledge walk off the couch and be in the ALCS. Like, I love that, because as much as I respect the wave of managers that came in that are younger guys like Craig Counsell or AJ Hinch or whoever it is, these guys of my generation, a lot of those guys really didn't have a lot of experience going in, and that was frustrating on one level, because Dusty Baker, that was always held over his head until he had vast, amounts of experience. But there was a lot of managerial candidates that didn't get shots because they were told they didn't have the experience. And then all of a sudden you have this wave of kind of lateral, as I call it, special assistants that got laterally moved into managerial chairs with very little experience at all. And that wave took on for a long time. And there was many, many managers that got opportunities, and some did really well, whether it's Mike Matheny or Robin Ventura or Walt Weiss or whoever. And but now it's kind of reset, because that was nice to get these like freshly retired players, but now you kind of realize that it is important to also respect that institutional experience has a lot of weight.
Glanville, we always appreciate your insight on baseball, on life, on everything else. Look forward to the rest of your call and then seeing you in the studio on the World Series. Thanks so much, man.
All right. Thank you for having me. My pleasure.